Our story begins with the parents of our protagonist, Jonathan Joestar, who have gotten into an accident. The father, named George Joestar, was saved by a thief who is the father of the antagonist, named Dario Brando. Time skipped a few years, and Dario is dying, and his son Dio Brando moves to the Joestar mansion, living with George Joestar and his son Jonathan Joestar. Upon arriving, Dio swears to make Jonathan's life a living hell in order to take the Joestar fortune upon George's death. Things that Dio did include burning Jonathan's dog, stealing his girlfriend's first kiss, humiliating him in front of his peers, and making him look inadequate in front of his father. Time skip a few years where nothing important happened, and Jonathan is now researching a stone mask, and Dio is poisoning George Joestar in secret. Jonathan eventually realizes what Dio is doing and calls private doctors, giving them specific instructions to prevent Dio from giving his father medicine. After this, he goes to look for a cure, where he meets the most useful character in the series, Robert E. Speedwagon, who leads Jonathan to the man who produces the poison that Dio is using. During this, Dio uses the stone mask on some random dude at a bar, turning them into a vampire. Cut back to Jonathan, who is returning home with the evidence he needs to call the police on Dio, and Dio just arrives, and he's about to be caught, and then he puts on the stone mask, turns into a vampire, kills everyone, burns the mansion to the ground, and the only survivor is Jonathan and Speedwagon. They encounter a man named William Zappelli, who teaches Jonathan how to use a power which can defeat vampires called Hamon, which is utilized by breathing correctly. Jonathan then goes through rigorous training in order to learn how to properly utilize Hamon. As they travel together, Jonathan, Zappelli, and Speedwagon encounter Dio, who manages to show a random power to raise the dead. The people he raised are apparently legendary heroes, Tarkus and Bruford, who fight the three heroes. Jonathan fights Tarkus, defeats him, gets his sword, then fights Bruford, and Bruford manages to cut Zappelli in two. Zappelli then transfers all of his power into Jonathan, and Jonathan defeats Bruford. After this, Jonathan encounters three new Hamon users who trained with Zappelli, named Tonpenti, Dyer, and Strazo. They rush to Dio's castle, where they fight and attempt to defeat him. In the battle, Dyer's entire body is destroyed except for his head, and Jonathan faces Dio in one-on-one combat. After a long fight, Dio is defeated and Jonathan goes home. After another time skip, it shows that Jonathan got together and married his childhood love, Erina, and they are both moving to America on a boat. They're seen off by Speedwagon and some other characters that weren't important towards the plot. And then on the boat, it's revealed that Dio has been surviving this entire time as a head with tentacles. He tries to take over Jonathan's body, and Jonathan can't fight him off. So he tells Erina to flee with their unborn child, and then confronts Dio's head, who somehow managed to set the boat on fire. And then he captures the head and cuddles it, and then they die on a burning boat that sinks. And that's how it ends.
Almost 50 years after Dio and Jonathan's final battle, we meet Speedwagon once again. He's become the founder of the Speedwagon Foundation, one of the most wealthy corporations in the world. His current project involves a Mesoamerican mummy whose tomb appears to have a depiction of the stone mask in it. Cue cut to New York. Over in New York, we meet our next protagonist, Joseph Joestar, Jonathan's grandson. That's about it. Back in some ancient ruin in Mexico, Speedwagon reveals that he's invited a master Hamon user named Strazo for some reason. Yes, the same Strazo from part 1, just old. Speedwagon shows Strazo a bizarre stone pillar in the ruins, one that appears to have the figure of a strangely proportioned man carved into it, along with multiple stone masks attached to it. It turns out that the man is not simply carved out of the pillar, but is instead a living man entombed in stone. Speedwagon asks Strazo to use the power of Hamon to destroy the man in the pillar before he wakes up. For some reason, Strazo asks a bit of a non sequitur. Is Joseph Joestar doing well? When Speedwagon expresses confusion about Strazo's question, Strazo kills everyone except Speedwagon. He then uses Speedwagon's blood and one of the stone masks to become a vampire because he wants eternal youth. Apparently, the man in a pillar is a 2,000-year-old example of the ultimate life form whose only weakness is an aversion to sunlight. Cut back to Joseph. He and his grandma go to dinner, and he beats up some racist gangster dude. This introduces us to one of Joseph's biggest traits, his apparent ability to either read minds or see the future. He tries to play this off as some sort of super Sherlock clue finding, but we know the truth, Joseph. We know. You don't have to hide it from us. Also, the gangster's boss shows up and tells Joseph that Speedwagon is dead. Later, Strizo shows up at the restaurant and tries to assassinate Joseph using the power of his youthful good looks. Joseph is not fooled, and he fills Strizo with bullets, because he predicted this, and thus the tone of Joseph's future battles is set, pulling random bullshit out of his ass at the last moment. Joseph eventually defeats Strizo, but doesn't kill him. Strizo, predictably, kills himself using Hammond, but only after warning Joseph about the man in the pillar. See, he was a good guy the whole time. Meanwhile, in Nazi Mexico, what? Speedwagon wakes up in an infirmary. The Nazi major, Rudolf von Stroheim, wants to study the man in the pillar, and so he allows the man to wake up. Stroheim proceeds to name him Santana, because Mexico. He sends a stone-masked vampire in to test Santana's abilities. Santana proceeds to consume the vampire with just touch alone. While the Nazis are getting worried, Joseph infiltrates the compound by outsmarting and outfighting a bunch of trained soldiers and special operatives. Joseph manages to beat him by forcing him out into the noon sun. Stroheim also helps by blowing himself up. He warns Joseph about the Nazis finding the other men in pillars and being about to wake them up. Joseph then goes to Italy to train in Hammond, where he meets Zappelli's grandson, Caesar Zappelli, and Lisa, a local master of Hammond. Training montage, blah blah blah, and blam, he accidentally gets himself into an unbreakable contract of you have to fight this guy with one of the newly awakened pillarmen, Wamu, by actually wounding him. So he gets a poisoned ring placed around his heart so they have to fight to get the antidote. Anyway, cue more training montage. So it turns out that they want some rock so they can become immune to sunlight, and Lisa has it. Another one of the pillar men, AC/DC, interrupts Joseph's final trial and promptly gets the shit beaten out of him. Over in Switzerland, it is revealed that Stroheim survived and is now a cyborg who's like 80% machine. He and Joseph decide what to do with the special rock, but Kars shows up and kicks the shit out of him with his chainsaw arms. Joseph manages to just barely keep the stone. Joseph, Caesar, and Lisa leave to go kick some Pillarmen ass. When they reach the Pillarmen's stronghold, Caesar rushes ahead and gets brutally murdered. However, he managed to retrieve the antidote for Joseph's heart ring from Wamu before he died. Joseph still vows to not take the antidote until he defeats Wamu anyway, making Caesar's whole sacrifice completely pointless. Joseph and Wamu have a chariot duel, and Joseph manages to outpredict his opponent, eventually defeating Wamu. Lisa and Kars also duel, but Kars cheats and defeats Lisa, which pisses Joseph off. Also, Lisa Turns out to be Joseph's mother. Stroheim rushes in at the last minute and saves the day with his chain gun stomach. Or not. Kars uses Lisa's rock thing and a stone mask to ascend to godhood. Fight scene, and then a volcano blows Kars out into outer space, because that makes sense. Joseph survives, but no one noticed, so he ends up marrying some girl and then crashing his own funeral.